Welcome back to our special transmission on YOUM-E-ISTEHSAL-E-KASHMIR. Of course, 5th August, Pakistan will commemorate the suffering of our Kashmiri brethren. We've seen meted out from across the border by Indians' brutality, the Indians' armed forces and their brutal forces being used on Kashmiri brethren even as we speak today. We know what happened as far as the abrogation and imposition as far as Article 370 and 35A. We've also seen the attempts by the Indian armed forces to change the demography. We've also seen the way that the Kashmiri youth has been targeted. We've seen the way women and children are being targeted even as we speak today. We'll be talking about all of this. We've also seen, we know that the Information Minister has said today that Pakistan considers it a national duty to raise its voice for Kashmiri's right to self-determination at every international forum, and there's no doubt that Pakistan has done so. Of course, the Prime Minister is also expected to join an event of Pakistani and Kashmiri leadership tomorrow to discuss. It's going to be chaired by the Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif to discuss these preparations. He's also expected to visit Muzaffarabad to show solidarity with Kashmiris and deliver an important policy statement. I have with me today in the studio Advocate Pervez Shah, who's General Secretary, All Parties Hurriyat Conference. Thank you for being with us today. We also have Farzana Yakoob, who's former Minister AJK. Thank you for joining us. And Dr. Jamil Ahmed Khan, who is a former ambassador. Thank you for being with us today. Pervez Sahab, there is no doubt that Pakistan is sympathetic and, of course, feels every brutality, every inhumanity that our Kashmiri brethren suffer, in Jammu Kashmir. The question is, Indians are ceaselessly continuing this, and the world international community continues to watch even as we speak today. Do you think that there is the concentrated effort of Pakistan, of, for example, Kashmiri diaspora, of the youth within Kashmir is having the kind of effect that we need at this time for those people, the women, children, the Kashmiris that suffer in Kashmir?
Thank you very much. On behalf of All Parties Hurriyat Conference, which represents the sentiments and aspirations of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, I am thankful to Pakistan Television for giving us the stage to speak to the world. Before coming to your question, it is very important to have a glance on the pages of the history, because it is very important to understand why this Article 370 and 35A was incorporated in the Indian Constitution, because everybody is talking of 370 and 35A, but people do not know how much it is important and what significance it has. All of you know, and that in 1947, then when this subcontinent was partitioned on 14th of August and 15th of August, two countries who were the colonies got independence, and one sovereign country, that is Kashmir, which has its own flag, its own set of legislations, its own ruler, and above all it was a sovereign country. It was occupied by the Indian authorities, Indian forces, however relying on an instrument of accession which does not exist in the archives of India anywhere, and not it has been presented to any international forum. Even though for the sake of arguments, if we accept it, the Maharaja has surrendered three subjects, that is defense, communication and foreign affairs, and rest the sovereignty he retained, and there was a Supreme Court, Prime Minister, everything was this. When the Constitution of India was in framing, there was a question arose that how this Constitution will be applied to state of Jammu and Kashmir when Maharaja has surrendered only three subjects. So there was a greater debate, and there was an agreement between the government of India and their cronies who inside the occupied Jammu and Kashmir. They reached an agreement that is known as Delhi Agreement. And there was an agreement that Constitution of India will be applied to state of Jammu and Kashmir with some amendments and with some reformation. So what happened that Article 370 was incorporated in Indian Constitution by the President of India,
But
and
Mr.
that
Hameed-
provided the room to add Article 335A, and that is gave the special status which has been abrogated today.
I want to talk more about this. I'll come back to you. Let me introduce other guests also, and you know the way that it's been abrogated and the way that Indian Supreme Court has been used. Farzana, there's also the role of the diaspora. Let's talk a little bit about that. And then I will let Pervez Sahib explain the historical context. Do you think that mobilizing, because earlier on we had the other guests and we were talking about how it's a huge chunk, as far as the diaspora is concerned, as far as Pakistan is concerned, together. And do you think that as far as publications are concerned, as far as taking this up on social media is concerned, do you think we're doing enough? I mean, do you think that perhaps that effort needs to be increased? Perhaps it needs to be, there needs to be more mobilization?
Yeah. So the diaspora on its own has always been very active. Any conversation that has taken place, for example, in the European Parliament, it has not only been the hard work of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Pakistan, but it has been coordinated by the diaspora as well.
Okay.
So the sail or the ship might be Pakistani, but the wind is blown by the diaspora. That is how we can, really express the work that diaspora says. What they also do is that they protest, they come out, and what that does is that people can understand what is going. They don't let the international media to forget what is going on in Kashmir. They also don't allow anyone to forget what India is perpetrating in Kashmir. But to say that is that enough? No, not at all. We need more publications. All Parties Hurriyat Conference has been actively collecting the data as to incarcerations, people, their lands being usurped, taken away from them. All of this data is now being presented for everyone. It is for people to use. Then there are other Kashmiri organizations which are also doing this. There is a compilation by one of the incarcerated journalists, Structures of Violence, which mentions the different heinous crimes that have been perpetrated against Kashmiris, where they were perpetrated. Now, why do I mention this specific book? This provides us an opportunity in, having legal warfare against India. 2 cases have been filed by Kashmiri lawyers in UK against the Indian government. I believe that that is a huge achievement, not only of the Kashmiris residing in Indian occupied Kashmir, but also of the diaspora, because this would not have been possible if our diaspora wasn't willing, wasn't this active when it comes to activism.
Let me come back to you. Dr. Jamil, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Jamil, there is also, we're talking about the role of the diaspora. I think Farzana explained it quite well. She says it's a very active, their role is very active. In terms of the publications, in terms of, because one knows, I mean, the kind of brutality that is happening in Kashmir and the way that it is being looked at from the world. The fact is that we need to tell the world more stories, and this is what we were earlier talking about. Do you think we are telling enough stories, and what is the best way to perhaps increase, the awareness all around the globe?
No, surely it needs a little more efforts and improvement, what we've been doing and what we are doing now. But the fact is that our diaspora, yes, they are quite active. Certain groups of our own segment of society, once they go out on their tour, they visit in their own capacity, they do attend seminars, symposium, they go and also deliver some talks and lectures in some of the universities. All these come under the umbrella of the public diplomacy. Now, there are just 3 major tools available to the world to ensure that the human rights violation or any other international law violation can be checked and can be, and the perpetrators can be basically brought to books or they could be made accountable. As our other colleague was saying, that the diaspora, there are 2 cases filed in the UK local court, the national court. Now that comes under the ambit of the international humanitarian law. And international humanitarian law, it gives room to any nation, regardless of the jurisdiction where the perpetrators are located or where the victims are located. So any state can take up the case and start their prosecution, regardless of the fact whether they get the cooperation from the respective state, which is alleged to have perpetrated, in this case, India. So, but at least that starts mounting pressure. And there are certain examples of it. Spain had done it. They had prosecuted Argentinian military officers. Then Belgium they had done that. And they had also prosecuted some international leaders, including Ariel Sharon. And then there is UK is now prosecuting, as you already heard. They had already prosecuted Charles Taylor, the Liberian president. So yes, we have really not been able to make that much of efforts, or we have not really taken our allies, are not been able to really muster their support the way we should. In fact, we have had the support in General Assembly of China, Russia, and some of our friends. We have our support in the Security Council, but then the non-permanent members, particularly three members, the permanent members, they sometimes, not most of the time, they oppose the resolution there. So what are the courses available? I said there are three courses of action. There are three major tools available to the world to ask for the justice. And those are, one is the legal diplomacy, and which you just heard, and legal diplomacy, all the international laws which is violated. And I would also underscore here the Human Rights Commission report, and that could be brought under the international law, but somehow we have only furnished 131 pages of dossier under an administrative mechanism to the Secretary General. But the actual vehicle to really be utilized for invoking the legal aspects and the international law is basically Article 49 of the Geneva Convention and additional protocol of Geneva Convention, Article 20, and there are a whole lot of articles, and International Criminal Court Article 20. So we have not been able to make those full efforts. In fact, we are short of making those full efforts. But what I would say that our other panelists are also here, and those viewers of ours in an international community and also the diaspora, that what is required is the human rights violation as an international crime. And if we embark upon that and align all these human rights violations, which is being mentioned and which is also included in our 131 pages dossier, and which has also been compiled by certain journalists, certain NGOs like the People's Forum or the forum, which is Indian, basically People Tribunal, and they had compiled a report in which they had even mentioned about the mass graves. So these compilation of the evidence are the major evidence which could take India to the main docks for the international pressure and trial. And once that is mounted, and once we adopt the right course and efforts in each stream of the course, like I said, legal diplomacy, and then it is always followed by the traditional diplomacy, which is coupled with the public diplomacy, which is now being mentioned, that the publication, the lectures, and the processions, and the conventions, and the seminars, all these come under the public diplomacy.
Let me go to Pervez Sahib here, and with this, Pervez Sahib, you heard what Ambassador was saying. In terms of the legal diplomacy, he's pointed out, the way we can agitate this. Do you think that, how do we channelize this moving forward now, in your opinion?
Thank you. As Ambassador Sahib has said that up to 2018 and 2019, we had the access to state of Jammu and Kashmir.
Okay.
But after the abrogation of Article 29, this Article 370, there is a complete blanket ban on the media, and at the same time there is an Indian corporate media which is distorting what is happening in Kashmir. Okay. After 2018, we had the access and we managed two reports were issued by High Commissioner for Human Rights in 2018 and 2019, and by he asked the Human Rights Council to send the fact-finding mission to Pakistan administered Kashmir and Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistan Azad Kashmir, it agreed and asked the High Commissioner for Human Rights, let them send this kind of delegation. But you know, Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir is a no-go area for all NGOs, international NGOs and the international media. Whatever news is coming from Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, it is a smuggled news. So the first problem we have that we don't get the news from Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. At least we had a little bit of evidence, and we submitted to different mechanisms, and on 24th of July the Human Rights Committee issued a report, and in which it was clearly mentioned that Indian authorities are using excessive use of force, which is resulting in extrajudicial killings. So the main front for us is that how we will counter the Indian media. We have sustained this movement in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. We are resisting against the Indian occupation. Even the Kashmiris did not sell even a single inch of land, despite the government of India issued 4.3 million these state subjects. So Kashmiris are resisting. It is the responsibility of duty of the Pakistan, state of Pakistan, that how it will counter the Indian narrative. On the political front, we are working a lot. On the diplomatic front, we have been working a lot, but on the media front, especially, we have not made so much attempts that we can counter India.
You think the media needs to highlight it?
Yes, even in Jammu and Kashmir, we are not even allowed to post what is happening in Kashmir. Once they post anything, they are being put behind the bars under Public Safety Act. No newspaper is even allowed to publish a single column news. So this is the major issue with this freedom movement, with the people of Jammu and Kashmir, that the question is how we will get more and more information from occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The more material we have available, the more we will disseminate and we will convene the international community.
What channels are used, Farzana, in now that there is a blanket ban, like Pervez Sahib is saying, how does information actually get to, for example, you, or get to, those people who can actually talk about it and, actually, further the cause? It's a difficult situation when such bans are imposed in today's age, but it's being done, and it's been done for a long time now.
Well, firstly, the only area which has maximum internet blackout is Indian occupied Kashmir, and it is documented. These issues are registered in the different organizations who are the watchdogs of connectivity and communications. So how do we get information? It is very difficult. We cannot access Facebook. Any dissent that is expressed in any social media platform, that person is apprehended and then they vanish, because everyone knows that once Indian army or Indian police takes away a Kashmiri, we seldom see their return. The cases are not filed, there are no FIRs, we do not know where they are. Now how do we get this information? We still have, thankfully, some modes of communication, this people to people contact, once in a blue moon, the telephone conversation, letters that are written. It's very archaic, to be honest. Very, very ancient forms of communication have survived this Indian hegemonic movement of not allowing us Kashmiris to be able to even forget seeing each other, to be able to talk to each other. It is extremely dangerous, not for us. The important part is that it is not an issue for residents of Azad Jammu Kashmir to communicate with our relatives, with our loved ones in the Indian occupied Kashmir. We are more concerned with our brethren who are in Indian occupied Kashmir. If the Indian government finds out that they have any kind of communication or connectivity with us, they get into trouble. So we try really hard not to express how this communication is going on, but we are trying our best to at least remain connected. Most of the communication, I'll tell you who they are, the diaspora.
But Farzana, why have we, I don't know, I mean, the question is that the way that people have come out, for example, we know, not that it's made a difference, I want to say this, we know what's happening in Palestine, and it's continuing, yes. And but the question is, should we be able to come out the way that we've seen people come out all over the world for the Palestinian cause? Because what's happening in Kashmir, like you said, and the barbarity, it's nothing short of what we are seeing, the inhumanity there also.
Indeed, indeed. One of the most important differences between Palestine and Kashmir is that, you see, Palestine is asking for independence. It is asking for a two-nation solution, which means that they want their own separate country. The difference is Kashmir is not asking for that. So that itself, what the world does is that instantly it brushes it off, that oh, this is an internal issue between India and Pakistan.
Because that's how India has camouflaged
yes.
it.
And so that is the dilemma for us Kashmiris, is that the Indian narrative is so strong. And as Pervez Saab correctly said, that we have not been successful. The government of Azad Jammu Kashmir, when we speak about Pakistan, the Pakistani media, we must also name the government of Azad Jammu Kashmir. Our media has also not been successful in creating documentaries, in creating movies, dramas, and you know, even news articles where people could associate with what is going on. You know, you have to have an emotional connection. People associate with Palestine, people associate with the Palestinians, the abuse that they face. Sadly, they don't have that kind of connectivity, that emotional connectivity with us Kashmiris, because of that lack of strong narrative.
Ambassador, I think that, you know, perhaps people do have that connectivity. I mean, one can say what Farzana here is saying. The question is, how does one channelize it? And the question is, how does one, I mean, the role of the media, of course, but in your opinion, what else is there? I mean, as far as agitating it on forums around the world, of course, the role of diaspora, but you know, apart from traditional means, how do we think out of the box for the Kashmiris, in your opinion, when we look at the world politics also at play?
Again, the three courses of action I already enumerated. The fourth one is the moral and the political pressure. Now, what our diaspora or what the media can attribute is particularly asserting a political pressure. Now, that political pressure translates and transforms into a pressure which the respective government of respective countries who are represented in the United Nations, they then make it an issue under the human right, for example. And human right, we don't really need to collect. You know, if we have the further evidence, it's fine enough. That would add to the evidence for any international forum, including ICC and General Assembly and the International Court of Justice. But the material which we already have, in fact, Pakistan has already furnished 131 pages of all what we are discussing, and all what all the channels and the newspapers are publishing and discussing. They are already contained. You can update it, fine enough, but because of the restrictions in Indian occupied Kashmir, that is becoming very hard, fine enough. But whatever we have, evidence that is sufficient to prove that India is violating the Security Council Resolution 47, which gives the right to the Kashmiris for the plebiscite. And there are about more than half a dozen resolutions which India is really trying to deflect. So how the pressure can be mounted? As I said, that respective missions of Pakistan and Pakistan friends, friendly countries, they can highlight these points to those respective countries who then represent in the United Nations. That's one. Second, about media, we're talking about, yes, media is a public diplomacy basically, but public diplomacy, unless it's transformed into any of these three courses available to resolve the conflict, dispute, or violation, unless we adopt that, probably will not be able to achieve our aim. How it could be done? It could be further, you know, if you want to create a bottoms-up pressure around the world, then our diaspora is already taking out the processions. What is needed is that consistency and continuity in diplomacy or in resolution of the international problems and issues like this, which has been tabulated by those two reports which has just been mentioned in 2018 and 2019, which also mention about the communication and about the internet and about the movement and about the torture and arbitrary detention and custodial death. It's all tabulated. It's already there, and that could be cited as an evidence in International Criminal Court, in the International Court of Justice, and General Assembly and Security Council. So in order to do that, media or public diplomacy becomes a main engine to channelize that, and channelized in a manner that once it is presented to the right forum in the world, that is heard and that is accepted. We have a universal declaration of the United Nations, and that is a major guiding instrument. And then this forum of international, this forum of Human Rights Council, that was created under a General Assembly resolution in 2006, and that has its legal value under the United Nations articles and chapters. So all these things, unless we tabulate it, unless we really make the centers in respective missions of Pakistan and some other friendly countries, or at least in our foreign office, where we should keep disseminating and keep convincing the world and the respective countries of the world about Kashmir, only media and public diplomacy would not pave the way, which could highlight the illegal act of India by in which they have abrogated Article 370 and Article 35. How could they ever abrogate? Even if we accept the instrument of accession, as our advocate Pervez was just mentioning, even if we accept, although it is disputed, in that very document, India has accepted that it would provide the rights and privileges of the people of Kashmir, right? And that right and privileges were provided through the Article 37 and 35. Now the Supreme Court says that was temporary. That's why we have withdrawn. Then the instrument of accession, accept it as a temporary and then abrogate it, and the Kashmir revert back to its original independent state. They would not do that. So my point is that there is some shortcoming in the advocacy. Otherwise, if I can hear on your channel for your viewer can just connect all these dots and present a case that present so many people, Mr. Pervez, other people, then connect and present this case. Why can't we draw a collective mechanism, collective strategy, whereby we are able to connect public diplomacy with legal diplomacy and with traditional diplomacy, and go to the right forums, which has been created by international law, which has been created by the United Nations Charter and various resolutions of Security Council and the General Assembly resolutions. We have to do that. Otherwise, we don't have. We all know what has been happening in Kashmir. Even the reports contain, don't we remember that the commissioner, once he presented the report, last report, he was having his tears rolling down on his cheeks in front of the cameras, in front of the journalist in a press conference. So we have to rely upon these very structured evidence.
What Jamil Saab is saying, of course, it's hard to disagree. You think that perhaps, that thread is missing, that, that connectivity is missing, that can, perhaps, like you said, and Ambassador Saab very succinctly mentioned, that it can further the narrative, and that is where we are lacking.
No, first of all, you were just talking about the Palestine. We should admit our fault as an all-parties Hurriyat conference that we could not maintain the connect between the people of Pakistan. We have to start from the Pakistan because this is the nation which is on our support. We lost the connection with the people. So we have revised it, and for the last 1 month, his Farzana is here, his father, has been the president of Jammu and Kashmir. He was with us in the Karachi, and we managed to connect with the people, and we brought huge number of people on the streets, and at the same time we were in Lahore, we were in Muzaffarabad. We are working on it. That coming to this question that how India can be brought to the book about the human rights violation, even if we don't have the access, as Ambassador said, we have the laws which itself are draconian, and we have the admissions. If the former chief of the Indian Army says we are going to change the DNA of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, and we are all out, to kill and eliminate the people of Jammu and Kashmir. These are the statements which corroborate our stance and our what we are talking about the human rights violation. But I am what I was say I am talking that we are still lucky enough that we have couple of journalists who have been risking their lives. They are sending reports to international newspapers. We have been seen that Al Jazeera, we have the Guardian, they are multiple times they have published their reports, and we have to create more and more contacts in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. We have to persuade the people, and we have to see other means of connections with the people of Jammu and Kashmir, because until and unless we do not get the information from occupied Jammu and Kashmir and the correct information, even if we file, we have one more problem. We submit a complaint against against the occupation authorities with the mechanisms of United Nations. They need the consent. But the people of Jammu and Kashmir are under such a tremendous pressure. When any communication is to them, they withdraw. They say we have not given, because they know once they give the consent, they will be behind the bars.
There's massive harassment.
That is such a massive harassment, and that is the reason that so far this is the major issue, and all parties Hurriyat conference is working on it, and we hope that we will find the solution of this major problem.
What about, other than, as far as narrative building is concerned, Farzana, what about seminars, what about meetings, what about, getting papers, for example, or books can be published, or pamphlets? Is the All Hurriyat Conference also working on that, or All Parties Hurriyat Conference, which is, like you said, and Pervez Sahab also mentioned that you're having these meetings. Are you also working on perhaps getting papers written, or publishing reports of what's happening?
So, All Parties Hurriyat Conference is one, collecting information, two, presenting it in such a manner that it is understandable, to make it really easy. They've also been regularly publishing reports of so this happened in 1 month, or this happened in this year. We have Kashmir Media Service as well. We have other organizations which are doing similar work. So when it comes to creating of content, which is really important, which highlights the atrocities, it is being done, but that content is not being propagated. It does not spread out, and people don't really find out about them. Whenever you want to search about Kashmir, sadly Indian content is what will come out first. As for research
is that because
projects,
of the algorithms that Indians have influenced?
Indeed, and yes, their numbers. For example, a very small example is that if you put up anti-Indian, pro-Kashmir content on any of the social media platforms, what happens is that multiple complaints are filed onto those platforms by Indians.
Okay.
Sadly, we don't have those kind of numbers where we could be complaining about their content and their content being blocked. But the other issue that we face is that most of these social medias, their head offices are sadly now in India. We have to face that as well. That is a harsh reality for Kashmiris, that the force and the strength that India garners at this moment is just too much for us to circumvent. It is really difficult for us to express ourselves on any of the media, and for that content to remain there, to protect it, it is becoming even more difficult. We have seen that does not happen so much for Palestine, but for Kashmiri content, any voice of dissent which is noticed or becomes famous to some extent, Indians instantly start complaining. And we've seen this post 5th August 2019, this has increased massively. Even during that time, we tried to reach to these platforms that we are facing this backlash, this kind of issue that people are complaining, and our content is being either shadow banned, which means that people will not see it. It is not going out to everyone that is meant for, or the content is being removed completely, and there was no recourse for that. And also our people get caught, they get apprehended by the Indian forces. That is where they face the problem. Now here is where Azad Jammu Kashmir needs to play a more important role. This is where we are very free to express ourselves. We the Kashmiris need to do more work. We really have to be the voice of our Indian occupied Kashmiris. We have to do more work. Our people have to be more vocal. they have to be more loud. We need to create more noise.
No doubt. Ambassador, what about within India? Do you think that, we have had saner voices in India talk about Kashmir? We've also had saner voices talk about, draw the parallel between what's happening in Kashmir and with the minorities within India. Do you think there's any way to perhaps channelize that for the Kashmiri cause, or you think it's beyond reach?
Definitely supports the Kashmiri cause also. The Indian Register, this Citizenship Act, the minority marginalization, which has been published by even the Religious Freedom Report of United States, and there are so many other reports on those minority marginalization and again human rights violation within the main land of India. So yes, those can be always connected. But the fact of the matter is that all those available not only evidence but the legal factual position. For example, how many of the stakeholders, Pakistan is a stakeholder in this, and the world is a stakeholder. Once there is a human rights violation, then the entire world, all the signatories of the United Nations Declaration, Human Rights Declaration, they have the obligation to really speak about it and to connect the dots. Now, how many of the member countries have spoken, and how many times have we also projected the presidential order? And it was not a constitutional amendment under which Article 370 was abrogated. Whereas in the instrument of accession, it was guaranteed, and the state of Jammu and Kashmir, its own status and its own consent of the people of the Jammu and Kashmir through their Constituent Assembly, nothing was taken. And the Supreme Court, imagine now the way that it has been, I would say, very conveniently, and I have the arguments to support that the Indian Supreme Court also has come up with a judgment which is in contravention to the international law. And we all know what are those international laws. So autonomous status of the occupied Jammu and Kashmir, which was guaranteed in Article 37, and which Article 370 is connected with the instrument of accession. And how many times have we come across such publication, such articles, such arguments at the international forum? I haven't at least noticed that. Maybe the other panelists might have read it and noticed it. So, and then comes another problem. That is again, international peace. International peace is a very alarming thing, particularly between the two nuclear armed states. And the entire world is quite concerned about it. And that has to be connected with what is going on in the Kashmir and what international violation, international law violation is taking place. So this is also destabilizing India and Pakistan relationship. It's these violation of the law, it can bring face to face the two nuclear states. So unless all these things are connected and the world is synthesized about these very facts, that how it can destroy the peace of the world, which is enunciated in Chapter 1 of the United Nations Charter. So unless all these things are connected and the dots are connected and presented at various platforms and the forum which we have just discussed and many more, I don't think that we will be able to achieve the goal what we are aiming.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Saab. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you so much for being with us. Advocate Pervez Ahmed Shah, thank you for joining us. Farzana Yakoob, thank you for being with us. Ambassador, thank you for your time. Overall, of course, we must agitate the cause, Kashmiri cause, on all fronts. And I think we explored in some detail how it has to be done both on the legal front as far as our diplomacy is concerned, as far as our relationship with other countries is concerned. As far as taking it up, as far as increasing interaction and furthering the voice and cause of Kashmir by the Kashmiri diaspora, all of those fronts must be channelized to talk about the sufferings of our Kashmiri brethren at the hands of Indian armed forces and the Indian state. Let's hope that we can do that. Let's hope that we can tell the story of Kashmir to the world, and let's hope that the world reacts to this inhumanity. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.
So